Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk to you about one of the best low-cost safaris that you can do here in South Africa, and that is our Elephant Plains Safari. So we've just come back from 4 amazing nights at Elephant Plains, where the sightings are simply unbeatable at this price range. Not only did we see leopards and lions almost every single game drive, but the quality of the sightings was unbeatable. Now, what makes Elephant Plains so amazing is their hit rate with big cats. Not only do they have 4 or 5 different prides of lions who can come through the area at any one time, but they also have about 10 resident leopards that can be spotted as well. Now, we were very lucky on this last trip that we actually saw 7 different individual leopards. One of the other things that makes Elephant Plains so special is the quality of their guides and their trackers. The fact that we went out every single game drive and managed to find our own animals was priceless. This gave us more time in the field with the animals and less time driving around doing nothing. So normally the first thing I do on a safari is meet with our guide and find out what was seen earlier that morning. This gives me a good idea of what we can expect and plan for the first game drive. On this safari, we were paired with Colbert, the tracker, and Doctor as our guide. Speaking to Doctor leaving the lodge, I found out that there was 4 Kambula male lions seen earlier in the morning, with a female as well. Now, leaving the lodge in the afternoon, the lions will never really be doing anything because it's too hot. So our idea was, let's go past that area, have a look and see what they're doing and see what the area looks like, so if we came back at around sunset and they got up, if it would be good photographically. As we pulled into the sighting, as expected, all 5 lions were in a heap under a bush, barely visible. So we decided to leave. We had barely driven for about 10 minutes and we bumped into Tiani. Now, for you guys who don't know, Tiani is an absolutely incredible leopard that lives right around the camp of Elephant Plains. She often actually hides her cubs in the camp when she has them. Now, one of the reasons Tiani is so famous in this area is because she is so relaxed. She will often come right up to the vehicle and even sniff it on occasions. She's also quite a busy leopard, which is great for us as photographers because she moves around a lot, meaning we get different shots from the sighting with her. Now, we were super lucky. Only 1 other vehicle joined us, and they joined us for about 10 minutes before moving on, and we sat with her for over an hour and a half. Now, in southern Africa, there is not many places where you can do that. After taking some awesome shots of her posing and moving through the bushes, eventually the sun set, and then we decided to leave her. Now, this whole time we kept checking on the radio to see what those lions were doing. And it wasn't much of a surprise to us, because they had eaten the day before, that they were still fat and sleeping in the bush. We decided to have a sundowner to celebrate and head back to the camp instead of going back to them. Morning 2, we decided to head out early and look for those lions again. We didn't even take a single photo of them the afternoon before, so we really wanted to see them in all their glory in the morning. Now, the nice thing with lions in the morning is if you get them early, there's still a good chance that they'll actually be doing something. Sadly, it wasn't our vehicle who found them, so we had to wait in line, but by the time we got to them, they were sitting by the dam, heads up still, and posing in some really nice flat light. Now, it's always amazing to see 4 male lions together, and I really hope this coalition sticks around and makes this place their home. In this particular sighting, we tried some stitching, which is taking a lot of photos with a long lens instead of zooming out and sticking them all together. This technique gives us a much nicer background than zooming out and using a wider lens. As we were deciding to leave, one of the males got up and walked towards the female, so we hung around for a little bit extra and he tried to mate with her. Oddly, because I think it's his sister, she didn't really want anything to do with him. So as he tried to climb on, she growled and hissed, and then she moved off. He looked a little bit sheepish, lay back down, and then we decided to leave. We hadn't been gone for more than about 15 minutes when we heard on the radio that this leopard called Shidulu was seen with her cub, Nene. As we made our way into the area, a space opened up for us and we made our way into the sighting. Sadly, by this point they had lost Shidulu, but we spent a good 20 odd minutes with Nene as he decided to try and hunt some impalas in the middle of the open. It wasn't very easy photographically because he was moving quite quickly. It was a difficult area to try and keep up with him. But we did manage to get some nice shots of him, and it was the first time the guests had seen him on the trip. But it wouldn't be the last. Eventually he went into some quite thick stuff, so we decided to leave and try and find his mother, Shidulu, instead. It didn't take long, and someone spotted her in a not-so-photographic tree. We tried to get a nice position on the tree, but because of the bushes surrounding it, photographically it wasn't the best. It was still super nice though to see a leopard in a tree, as some of our guests hadn't ever seen that before. She also put on quite a show coming down. We spent about another half hour with her as she walked around her territory marking, and then eventually she was spotted by some vervet monkeys who started alarm calling. As soon as they did that, she started to do some territorial calls before walking into some thick bush, angry at the monkeys, and tried to ditch them. It was very difficult for us to keep up them, so we moved on. On our way back to camp, we had heard that another vehicle was tracking 2 other male lions, not the 4 that we had seen earlier in the morning. Now these lions have got a bit of a reputation about them already. They are the plains camp males, and sadly they've come into the area and started killing some of the females. Now, as Doctor was hearing over the radio that these males were potentially in the area, I could see the excitement on his face. He told me these are the biggest and best looking male lions in the Sabi Sands, and that if we managed to get to see them, I would be impressed. We were literally about 30 meters from the camp when we picked up their tracks. We drove around one bush, and there they were, lying in the open on the airstrip. And Doctor was right. These are massive males. As we pulled in, they were panting and breathing very heavily as they had moved such a large area in the night. Doctor was telling me that these males, all they're looking to do is fight other lions and take over an area. The Kumbulas earlier in the morning had been contact calling each other, and every time they made a noise, these boys picked up on their location, honed in with their ears and their eyes, and started moving closer in their direction. Eventually it was time to go back to the lodge, and we had made a plan to try and get back to those lions in the afternoon. Both myself, Colbert, and Doctor were convinced that if these lions met up in the night, there would be a huge fight, and it would be an amazing sight to see. Heading back out on game drive in the afternoon, we found the 4 Kumbulas still around the same dam, being very lazy. A buffalo had even walked right past them, got into the dam and fallen asleep, and none of the lions reacted. Sadly, it wasn't the sighting we were hoping for. Nobody had managed to pick up on the 2 plains camp males, however, so we left again and tried to track them down. Eventually, after sunset, we managed to find them sleeping in a very strange place next to a small little pan. Sadly, long into the dark, they just slept. We did manage to get a couple of backlit images as other vehicles pulled in, but for the most part, it was very anticlimactic. That night we didn't hear any commotion going on in the bush, so we assumed that the lions didn't meet up or have a fight in the night. We drove around the Londolozi border, which is on the southern side of Elephant Plains, to see if we could see where the lions maybe moved in or moved out, as they were not in the same spot they were the night before. As we were driving down the road, we saw what looked like a leopard run into the bush onto our side of the property. As we got in there, we've discovered it was Shinzela's cub. She is an absolutely beautiful leopard, but boy did she make us work. She just bombed through bushes the whole time as she tried to catch some scrub hares and get away from some drongos which were alarm calling at her. It was almost impossible to get the vehicle into where she was and get in front of her to get a photo. After about 10 minutes, we had actually heard on the radio they had found the plains camp male, and an Nkuhuma female which he had met up with in the night, so we decided to leave this leopard as she was not working out for us and go and see those instead. As we pulled in, we discovered that it looks like the Plainscamp male possibly did meet up with the other lions in the night and had a fight. He was covered in scratches and scars all over his face and his front legs. The 4 other Kumbula males were currently unaccounted for, and the other Plainscamp male was also missing. As I had said, he had met up with an Nkuhuma female, and he was trying to mate with her. Now sadly for her, she had been caught out by him and she had no interest in him, but with his recent track record of killing females who weren't trying to mate with him, she seemed to know better. Every opportunity she got to try and sneak behind a vehicle to get away from this boy, she took. But of course he kept following her and cornering her. We did see a couple of attempted matings, a little bit of growling and some fly swats. Eventually we were sitting watching these 2 lions and we heard a commotion behind us in the bush. There was a lot of birds alarm calling of different species who just were not happy. Myself, Doctor and Colbert suggested that maybe there's a leopard there and we should go and have a look. We drove about 50 meters and we found Nene, Shadulu's cub that we had seen the day before. He was sitting there watching these lions like it was a TV show. We decided to stick with him because he was in a better area with less grass in the way, and then eventually he did what everyone was waiting for, and he climbed a tree. Now photographically, this was a much better tree than what Shadulu had climbed the day before. We managed to get multiple different photographs from different angles and in beautiful light. This was simply one of the sightings that makes this place so special and really made our guest trip. Eventually, after about an hour, we decided to leave him, have one last look at the lions, and then make our way back to the camp. As we were leaving, we actually discovered that the 2 lions were now approaching the tree that he was in. This did not make his day, as the lions would have killed him if they could have. He quickly scrambled to the very top branches where he hid. The lioness picked up on him straight away, but because this huge male was annoying her from behind, she didn't really do anything about it. This had turned into one of those sightings where the adrenaline was very high at the fear of what could have been. Eventually, the lion sat down, slept next to the tree, and we had to leave. In the afternoon, we had our only slow drive of the trip. There's always going to be one. We normally warn everyone about it, and this was it. We went out and checked on the area where the lions and Nene had been in the morning, and neither were around. Oddly, we couldn't pick up on any tracks for any of them, but the blocks were really big, and so we just assumed that they'd snuck away over a hard piece of ground somewhere. We drove around looking for them for quite some time before leaving the area and trying to check up where Tiani was seen by another vehicle earlier in the morning. She had apparently stashed a kill in a horrible area, and we decided we'd give it a go. Now, as we got there, we discovered where she had stashed the kill, and she had moved into an even worse area. After giving the guests a bit of a fright by pretending we were going to drive off a cliff, we decided to leave and count our losses. We had a really nice sundowners before heading back to the lodge. The next morning's drive really made up for it. This was one of these drives that as a photographer you can only dream about. We picked up on Nene's tracks really early in the morning, about 15 minutes before the sun was actually rising. We dropped off Colbert, who started to track it, and we drove around the other side of the block to check if there's any other tracks we could find. We hadn't been tracking for more than 5 minutes when Colbert rang us and said he'd found him. As we arrived, the sun rose right behind him, creating the most beautiful golden light every photographer wants. We managed to photograph a couple of shots before he climbed onto a termite mound and then posed really beautifully as well. After the sun had risen a little bit more, he climbed down and decided he would be a bit of an idiot and play with a ball of elephant poo, eventually before falling asleep. Again, we spent about an hour with him with no interruptions and had the most amazing sightings. No grass in the way, leopard to ourselves, playing, looking at us, posing, beautiful light, the stuff that dreams are absolutely made of. When we decided to leave him, we found out that none of the other vehicles had actually spotted anything yet. So we decided to see if we can go and pick up on those mating lions from the day before. Eventually, about 10 minutes before we needed to go back to camp, we did find them, and sadly, photographically, it wasn't very good. The light was very high and very harsh, and again, the female not wanting to be near the male had taken us into a very rough area. We watched them for about 10 minutes or so before leaving them for the afternoon drive. In the afternoon, we found the lions again, but this time they were in an even worse area photographically. We could see them really nicely and we could see that they were trying to mate, but photographically it was just no good. We spent a little bit of time with them before deciding let's go and try and find something else. As we were leaving, we got a call on the radio that far on the other side of the property they had spotted a male leopard that we hadn't seen yet. As we started racing our way towards that direction, we came down a little pathway where myself, Doctor, smelt a kill. Now a fresh kill has a very distinctive smell like nothing else. So we stopped the vehicle where we were, got out and had a little walk around to look for tracks or any signs of a kill. Eventually Colbert and Doctor went one way, I went the other way, and they walked straight into a leopard who we also hadn't seen yet. We got back in the vehicle and we drove into the area to find Makum Sava. Now Makum Sava is a beautiful leopard. She had hidden the kill under a bush and covered it in grass. She was sadly very fat as she had done a lot of feeding that day, and she was also flat in the grass and not great photographically. We decided we would leave her and try and find the young boy instead and come back to her later to see if she would put the kill in a tree. As we got to the area where the young male was, he started moving into a block where we wouldn't be able to follow. We managed to see him for about 10 seconds before he moved off. Luckily in this time we did get some shots, and he is a beautiful boy. We believe this leopard is Shitsalala. After he ditched us very quickly, we decided to go back to Makum Sava and see what she had done. As we pulled back into the sighting, she was still sleeping in the same area, so we decided to go and have a sundowners close by to listen if there was any interaction. We were expecting hyenas to come and steal her kill because she had left it in a very exposed place. After the sundowners, we pulled back in. She still hadn't moved, so we decided to leave her as to not attract any hyenas with our presence. The next morning, pulling out into that area, we discovered that she had lost her kill to the hyenas and she had moved on. Now this was sadly our last game drive on Elephant Plains, and we hadn't seen wild dogs yet. We believe they're denning on 2 neighboring properties close by, and their tracks kept coming in and out while we were there. We decided to drive down the border and see if we had a chance of seeing them. Sadly, as we got to one corner, we discovered that the dogs had been on the road mere seconds before we got there. A very fresh steaming poo and very nice footprints gave them away. As we drove off, Doctor asked if we wanted to go back and try and see another leopard, and we said instead, let's rather drive back slowly one more time on that road to see if we get lucky. As we came round the corner, about 1 kilometer away, through our binoculars, we saw, here's the dogs on the road. We raced down to where they were and managed to get some really nice pictures before they moved back off the property and to where they had been for the whole week. This was a really nice way to top off an absolutely incredible safari. But we weren't quite done yet. We heard on the radio that Shadulu had finally come back to pick up Nene after making a kill. We moved into the sighting and we watched them for about an hour as they tumbled and rolled in excitement of greeting each other after 3 days and played as they walked through the whole property towards where they had the kill. Sadly, we never made it to the kill because it took quite a long time, but the enjoyment that the guests got from watching these two leopards playing was priceless. At one point, Nene also decided he would try and stalk some elephants, just to see what would happen. Now, if you would like to join us in 2025, we currently have 3 safaris to elephant plains. The first is the 1st to 5th of May, which only has 2 spaces available. The second is 24th to 28th of July, which has 6 spaces available. And the last is the 8th to the 12th of November, which only has 3 spaces still available. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.